Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are watching this video, warm welcome to all of you. Leadership is not a unidirectional journey which you just pick up with some skills, knowledge, and experience. It's more of a multi-dimensional journey where various aspects of things are involved. It could be your voice, it could be your personality, beliefs, upbringing, environment, and energy management. Many of these topics are not taught in the B school. Hence, in this leadership leap journey, learning through conversation, I would like to explore some conventional and unconventional dimensions of leadership skills, and that really helps you to take leap in this journey. Welcome to Learning Through Conversation. Today's guest is one such expert. Her name is Deepti Gujar. Deepti is an IT professional turned coach who specializes in childhood trauma oriented coaching. She is a biodynamic craniosacral practitioner, which is a somatic paramedical therapy which helps people release deep seated emotional issues and trauma without the need to talk or relive the experience. Deepti is also popularly known as a coach's coach, helping several coaches and leaders nail their niche and high ticket offering, putting them on the financial success. Apart from that, she has also been the product manager for one of the industry's top coaching product. Welcome, Deepti. It's great to have you on the second episode of Learning Through Conversation. Please do share something with our audience which I have not shared in your intro.
Thank you so much, Vera. It's so beautiful to be part of this conversation and explore this theme. So yes, something unusual about me is that I'm a crazy Korean drama buff. I love watching Korean drama, but I haven't jumped onto the wave just like the rest of the world recently. I was introduced to Korean drama way back in 2012, and it was a turning point in my life because I saw a lot of things in drama which nobody was talking about at that time. So yeah.
It's interesting that we will have lots of notes on the Korean dramas to share.
Yes.
But moving on with our conversation, a very basic question that I would like you to address to the audience is, what as per you is trauma and what is the impact it has in general on people?
So, very simply put, trauma is any undigested emotional material. What do I mean by that is that it's anything, any incident, any set of situations that have not been accepted and accepted and digested as part of life, and because of that they have now created an alteration in your relationship to some element in your life. So for example, we have sometimes people struggling with some very mundane issues, like you have people with exam stress, and then that translates into appraisal stress. And it's because the exam trauma, the trauma of having to appear for an exam or having to even show up for results, can be so much undigested that even showing up for appraisals can feel like, oh my God, the same set of sensations of overwhelm can come up. So something like that, that is actually trauma work.
I just want to ask simple things for my audience, probably any three simple tips that they can use it on their daily basis, which will help them to have abundance of energy, to work on any productive things. Could you share that?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is have a very clear, conscious switch off from your work. Sometimes we love our work, right? And we've all been there. Some we get this ideal work, we just love our work. But even if you do love your work, don't make your work your life. Really, learn to switch off, because your life is life and your work is work. And the red flag that you do need to be aware of, the day you can't switch off from work, that becomes your red flag. Remember, that's your trauma red flag. It's kind of so the first thing is switch off. And towards that, what I would like to say is, second, build simple rituals. For example, the moment you come back from work, you go for a walk in nature. You do something completely unrelated, at the same time, something oriented to body movement. Again, kind of going back and hinting back at my favorite thing, that is Korean drama. It's an interesting thing in Korean dramas. They often show that when a person gets very stressed, they go to a karaoke bar and they just sing their hearts out, and they like say all these like good gibberish words, and they're loud, they dance like mad people. But what are they actually doing? It's a sense of trauma release, right? It's a sense of stress release, but it's movement oriented, it's body oriented. If a lot of us are think that let's just go and drink it out and get done with it, that doesn't resolve things. Movement of the body, doing something very unrelated, it even signing up for a dancing class, learning something like that, or a pottery class, that is immensely uh, important. And the most simplistic thing, go back to your teenager time, put on your teenage music, put it on a nice big speaker, and just dance your heart out. Every day a new track. So the moment you start doing this kind of ritual, you will see that something in you will start to shift. And third, very important, celebrate the small victories that you get. A lot of us wait for that big promotion, for that big award, or the big reward. What we don't realize is that our nervous system is keeping score, it's keeping track. So it's very important that today, if all you did is you met your goal, you finished your checklist, and you logged out 5 minutes before time, celebrate that. Small things, small victories are so much more essential than big victories.
Thanks, Deepti. Audience, you noted that, right? So your nervous system is keeping track of all the small and the biggest thing. So if you have anything small that you have succeeded, please go and celebrate. Either buying a new dress, going and pampering yourself, going out in the sun, or walking. Whatever you can do for yourself and to your body, that really helps in this journey. As I said, leadership journey is not about just picking skills, knowledge, and experience. It's also exploring the various aspects of energy management, environment, beliefs, all those things. And I think Deepti's interview today has helped in understanding the trauma part and the energy management system, how it helps us to take that bigger leap. Um, Deepti, this program, Learning Through Conversation, which is part of the Leadership Leap series, is focused on understanding the journeys of a leader. And since you're actually somebody who comes from this healing on the trauma part of it, I would like to understand, how does a trauma play out in the journey of a leader?
Good question, because most people are afraid of exploring that, or are actually not even aware that trauma has actually a very significant role. So one of the key things, a few of the key things that people in leadership roles do need to do is, one, they need to delegate very effectively. Second, they need to create a vision for their people and motivate people based on those visions, on that particular vision. And the third thing is, they have to be very they have to be really keen in observing and understanding their own limitations and transcending those and overcoming those. Now, what happens is, much as we put a lot of systems and everything in place, and I would like to share the case study of this lady who came to me because she could make her target revenue. She had already met her target revenue of $2 million per month as a turnover, and she wanted to scale up to $5 million. And it was very interesting. She put in all the systems, she had a scalability coach for it, and she was getting all of the things right, except for the fact that when she had to close a critical deal with a collaborator or with a business partner, she would land up with an injury, or she would not end up going to the meeting, or she would fall sick, or she would sometimes just say the wrong things and it would just end up getting sabotaged. And that was very interesting. At one point, she was very frustrated. And when she came across one of my posts about trauma, I think something connected for her, and she just reached out and asked me, could this be a trauma thing? And I said, let's explore. Let's see what happens. And as things started unfolding, yes, sure enough, there was a trauma there. at the back. And the trauma was more or less that because of a critical connection and a critical conversation she had had with her mother as a child, she had created this limitation within herself that beyond this particular point, of course, it was nothing to do with the number. It was what the number meant to her family, right? It is because, if she scaled up to, say, $5 million in revenue, suddenly she would lose that approval of her mother. And that kind of stayed. And even though she didn't stay with her mother and didn't really interact with her on a day-to-day basis, it still played out. And this is interesting how trauma is that unconscious, subconscious script. And it ended up changing her relationship to that figure of $5 million. Anyways, so moving fast forward into that, as we started working with trauma and releasing all of these childhood triggers around it, and her system relaxed, well, she went on to actually close almost like halfway through the session work, the program work. She ended up closing a deal of $8 million. And we
Wow.
knew then, we knew then that she is very, very close to hitting her target and she will meet her target.
It is
So yeah.
so interesting, Deepti, that uncovering a person's trauma and healing actually can lead to even financial success. You know, it's also interesting. I'm sure, I think when we discussed earlier, also, there are a lot of people which I've seen in my circles and people you have worked with, some of very senior leaders or CXO level people who have done really well. They have been a role model, they've worked hard, and they've come up to that level. And after a certain point, they just don't seem to perform, they and
Yeah.
this is where I think most of the mid to senior level people feel themselves very stagnated. What as per your worldview, this phenomena, what exactly is happening?
Yeah, so like I mentioned even about her, so what happens is our nervous system knows in advance when we are about to go beyond our unconscious. And I would say really it's unconscious, like nobody goes and tells us that you're going to be a CXO and you're going to hit this particular level of success, right? So it's a very unconscious thing that is set in us, but our nervous system knows ahead of time when we are going to exceed a certain limitation in our life. And it's at that time that it tries to put a brake on ourselves. So a lot of people, they work behaviorally with all of this and it doesn't work. It just, they still end up, going complacent, either through falling sick, attracting an injury, attracting some kind of an issue in the household, just suddenly taking time off. So what is happening is that our biology knows that, beyond a certain point, it feels overwhelmed. There is a sense of loss of control that's perceived, and therefore a shutdown is then executed. And that is what I personally have come to term it as a success threshold. Success threshold is that threshold which, the moment we try to cross it, our entire biology, our nervous system just kind of shuts down. And literally, by law of attraction, we kind of attract either an injury within ourselves or something in our environment that makes us go back, withhold, and step back.
That's an interesting coinage of word, success threshold. I've not heard it so far. It's so you are suggesting that the body, it's our body and the mechanism of our nervous system which actually defines us the set point for our success, which you call it as success threshold. This is
Yes.
more of a follow-up question, Deepti. I would like to understand how you have dealt with patients who have, stagnated with this success threshold.
So for clients who have had this kind of success threshold, the way we've actually worked is that I actually directly work with their nervous system, with their biology, and with helping them consciously slow down. And it's like slowing down is the secret to speeding up. By consciously getting them to slow down, not just at a behavioral level, but also allowing them at a biological level to truly undo the stress mechanisms, the stress connections, and the neurological connections that are set within themselves, to just undo that. And that is, of course, largely through the craniosacral work that we do, because it works directly with our nervous system, It's a nervous system to nervous system connect. There is no talking involved because, like, it's very important to understand. You cannot tell your nervous system it is safe to have XYZ amount in your account, or it is safe to succeed and get into that glass cubicle at the end of the office corridor, or at that it is safe to succeed and be this CXO title. You cannot talk and teach your nervous system. Your nervous system already knows before you do, before your conscious brain does. Because the frontal brain has developed much later, your reptilian brain is more in charge and it has actually evolved you through times, right? So the way we work is directly non-verbal approach, directly working with the nervous system.
So, so I'd like to understand a little more. I understand that it is non-verbal,
Yeah.
and but how does it operate? How does, for one to visualize it, what is a biocranial therapy? I mean, can you just give a little more details on that?
Yeah, sure. So the biodynamic craniosacral work actually depends and works with this entire approach that memories that have impacted you and created alterations within your biology, those memories are still intact, and they're intact in at least 4 different systems within our bodies. One is the fascia system, second is the nervous system, the third is our actual bones. Our bones can carry an impact that we've received in our childhood. And I'm not talking about physical impact. I'm also talking about emotional impact that can happen. Years later, people just develop migraines, for example, and they get a severe migraine headache just ahead of an important critical meeting. Well, what is that, right? Or an important thing that is going to happen. So that is the third system. And so because of these, working with these different systems, what we do is we allow these systems to go into their inherent state of health. An inherent state of health is not just, it's actually a very technical term that is practiced by craniosacral therapists, where we bring our body's attention to a space within us in that system that is already in a state of health. And that creates like a resource through which everything else starts aligning and falls in a rhythmic motion around that state of health. So that is how we work. However, I must tell you that this entire science where the nervous system itself shuts down it comes from a very popular theory known as the polyvagal system, the polyvagal theory. And there are a lot of other teachers that have talked about this stuff, and that is one of them being Dr. Gabor Mate. And Gabor Mate is actually very, very famous in also a lot of leadership work. And if you actually listen to his videos, he does talk about one of the most fantastic quote that he has given is, when you cannot say no, your body says no for you. And at the end of the day, it finally then, therefore, it all translates into how much energy you have as an individual, because trauma tends to hoard energy. And, that's the reason why we will go to a certain point and then shut down.
You've kind of opened up a lot of things, and it's too interesting, like how trauma happens to be like a gateway to holding your energy.
Yes.
Opening up of actually opens up the whole world, hold of opportunities. It also brings to an important and interesting question that I've always had, is that all of us have 24 hours. And
Yeah.
And then there are people who do so much with that 24 hours. There are leaders. I mean, just because it's interesting, there are some leaders who sleep for just 3 hours and they're able to give speeches and do a lot of work. And there are a lot of people who do nothing and they get tired. There is a mental fatigue or something. So you said something about the energy management. So how does this phenomena is connected to managing of energy, and somebody having more energy, somebody having less energy, Deepti?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting, right? So what happens is that trauma is like putting I would say, charcoal in your system, and charcoal, or carbon in your system, and it, just like carbon, kind of just absorbs all the material around it. I think that's carbon, right? So yeah, carbon takes like all of the material around it. Similarly, kind of trauma tends to hold, or rather hoard, a lot of energy, which means that one childhood trigger that was there is going to keep not only bugging you, it's going to create something we call as the emotional noise, like an emotional static noise for you, which is why your ability to think straight in a situation, your ability to, like, okay, I woke up with this goal and I need to get my goals met today. But by the time you start meeting your goals, guess what? The emotional static has come in, clouded your perception, clouded your mind. And because of that, you have lost sight of the goal, or you've lost the clarity of what it would be to achieve that goal, or what it takes to achieve that goal, right? So trauma in that sense kind of dampens your energy. And a lot of times, just through the first initial sessions itself, we see a lot of people coming back, and a lot of my clients would say that, you know, the best thing is I slept better and I had a lot of energy. And I started opening up that, that one work thing. Like when I worked with a lady who had severe COVID related trauma, the first thing she said is that I had started my PhD before COVID, but I don't know what happened. I could never touch my material. And the moment, we worked with the trauma release sessions with her, the first thing she did is she opened her PhD material and she started getting on with it. And she's like, this was an unexpected outcome of the session. And it was like, yes, because when the emotional static is gone, you not only get more energy, but you also start having a lot better focus, and you start achieving your goals brilliantly in lesser amount of time, more efficiently rather. So yeah, energy and trauma are like, it one feeds into the other. It's like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and also the fact that uh, this. So we have this gateway, and or
Yeah.
like I assume that there is this river which is flowing, and that is what I think this energy is all about. And there is a dam, and even if the dam is there, if it is all closed up and the water comes and then kind of builds up, and that is when it plays kind of an havoc. And
Yeah.
like I use EFT to open up the dam gates, and I think you use biocranial, the sacral therapy. Both of them have an impact to open up and then free the person's energy for something that he can do with it, as big as he wants it.
Yes.
And that the fact that there is a tool which helps us itself is so liberating. And it's so glad, Deepti, that you are able to have an expertise in this and help out so many people. And I'm glad that you are doing so much of work in this space. Dipti, you mentioned that you love the Korean dramas. You know how much I love the Bollywood, all kinds of movies. This movie, this Diwar movie, and the movies of 70s where the childhood, they'll separate or they grow up to take the revenge, 20 Saal Baad kind of movies. It's
Yeah.
very interesting, especially this movie, Diwar, in which Shashi Kapoor says, "Mere paas maa hai," and and then the Amitabh Bachchan and dialogues between Shashi Kapoor. The point I'm trying to make here is that they have beautifully crafted this childhood traumas or the beliefs, and these people have grown, even though they are like Shashi Kapoor and Amitabh Bachchan in the movie, they have the same parents. Both of them grew to be two sides of the loss. uh, it's an interesting phenomenon, and it works very well in the Bollywood. But how does this happen? And they're from the same family, they've seen the same background, but they've turned out to be two different things. Is anything related to trauma, or this is something beyond it?
Yeah, very, very nice observation, because this is very much related to one extremely important trauma, and it's something that I hinted in an earlier question as well, and that is related to parental disapproval. Because what happens is, the moment a parent disapproves of a child's choice, And it could be way, way back, right? Like a child choosing vanilla ice cream instead of chocolate ice cream. And you're saying, what is wrong with you? Why would you choose vanilla? Just that no, just that sense of saying no without, just that sense of disapproving is like death for the child, right? And that gets internalized as trauma for the child. Then the child will try and compromise his own identity to the highest way possible just to please that parent, which gets internalized in his or her head. And we end up doing that so much that we don't realize that sometimes we put brakes on our own success because log kya kahenge, and those log are not outside people, they are our own family. And I want to tell you something very interesting about Diwar was a very interesting, I think it was written by Salim Javed, who have written some phenomenal scripts and have woven in this whole trauma angle brilliantly. I think they were the best story writers, script writers ever, if you ask me, in Bollywood. So, the way they wove that in is they showed, and for me, what always strikes me in that movie is that sense when his highest goal, when he achieves that, is basically getting that building that his mother worked in as a laborer, buying that building for his mother and handing those papers to her and said that, there, I've bought this building for you. And the mother then saying that you didn't have to do this for me because you're not my husband. Now that is another classic example of, trauma, where a person, is so enmeshed in their heads with what the mother couldn't have, that they change their entire identity. He forgets that he is a child and he becomes a mother's spouse instead. And that makes he constantly keeps him on the treadmill of success, not knowing that, well, it was not his problem in the first place. I mean, it's okay to give gifts to your mother, but you don't really have to buy the whole building. But a lot of leaders, it's interesting, but I'm going to kind of zoom out and say this doesn't just apply for a lot of movies. A lot of CXOs, the need for power, the need to have that authoritative position, a lot of times undiagnosed or uninvestigated, it comes from sometimes our own need to be that power, that authority that one of our parents missed and kind of projected onto us. We call it projection, right? So they projected onto us. So we kind of try to fulfill unconsciously our mother's place or our dad's place, and we try to be that ideal partner that they didn't have. And we do that by trying to be super successful, trying to be the star performer. And because of which also at one point success kind of goes and just hits the brakes and is like, you know what, I'm done. And that's when they start investigating within themselves. So there is a very strong trauma angle that is there with success, and especially Diwar also highlighting it.
Thanks, Deepti. That was very interesting. We discussed about a Bollywood case scenario, and you love Korean dramas. Do you want to share any favorite Korean drama around this theme?
Yeah, and I am so surprised and taken aback. I mean, the reason I love Korean drama so much is because their portrayal of trauma is so subtle and so beautiful. So, one of the most popular Korean dramas out there is The Good Doctor, right? It was one of those big exports to Hollywood, and Hollywood has remade that, and it's available on Netflix as well, both as the Hollywood one version as well as the original Korean one. Now, I've seen the original Korean one, so I'm going to speak about that. I'm not talking about the main protagonist because there is a disability involved in all of that, and that is fine. But it is about the second lead and how much they've invested in that character and how there is a trauma angle there. Now, the second lead is hypersensitive about a certain category of people. That is, for example, he's hypersensitive and overtly critical about, this guy joining his team. And it then turns out through the storytelling that they then show how it comes in from the fact in the way in which his brother died because of some negligence from his side. And his brother was also the kind of a very sensitive kind. I think he committed suicide or something in that. And, he's a very mentally, emotionally sensitive person. And a kind of negligence from the second lead side leads to that person ending his life. How that ends up oversensitizing this guy. And that also speaks to in our actual workplace scenarios, you might find leaders being hypersensitive or overtly sensitive or hypercritical about certain category of people or certain type of people. And it's sometimes not even certain type of people, but it's sometimes also certain kind of situations, right? For example, you might find leaders very, very critical about people who are absolutely not on time, and who have an issue with punctuality. And instead of, taking it up and putting them through behavioral exercises or whatever and the right training and all of that, they can just go at it, and it becomes a trigger for the leader, right? So these are issues that actually come from a trauma perspective, and I love the fact that in Korean dramas you actually get to see this. And it's interesting because the movie Jobs, which focuses on one side of Steve Jobs' life, his very personal side, that speaks so much about his trauma of abandonment and how he used that trauma of abandonment in dealing with the way in which he saw the company's growth, and he could easily, he would sever connections, and he was very hypersensitive about certain relationships in his life. So I don't know how accurate that portrayal is, but it has a very big connection to trauma that is made in that movie. So yeah,
it's very interesting how people use the real life examples and real life belief system in their movies, and probably that's why they are so hugely popular.
Yeah.
And whether it's Korean drama or Bollywood or any regional movies, I think they weave all these things from the real experience, and this makes the whole thing more fascinating. Thanks, Deepti, once again for sharing on the Bollywood as well as the Korean dramas. Now, thank you so much, Deepti, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the audience. I think they know how to reach to you if they have questions related to biocrenal therapy and anything related to childhood trauma, how to overcome them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.